Yes, welcome on into the Auburn Daily Show, the Friday edition, the triumphant return of me, your host, Lindsay Crosby, Auburn baseball writer for auburndaily.com, also host of Locked On MLB Prospects, joined by the fantastic, the wonderful, the great flow of Harrison Tarr, writer for auburndaily.com, also one of the hosts of the College Loop. And Harrison, I think the big story right now, you see the portal's going to open up this weekend, but Auburn's already lost somebody who we thought was going to contribute in 2023 to the portal in Jeffrey Imba.
Yeah, that's certainly a storyline, and in something that I won't lie, Dylan Larkin myself lost some sleep over last night, just trying to determine how do you even begin to approach this one specifically from our perspective, because I mentioned this last night on our reaction video with the College Loop, Lindsay. Jeffrey Imba was a piece that we really expected to be really a big part of this defensive line rotation in 2023 for that Ron Roberts defense. And I'm not over the moon shocked. And we kind of been braced for impact as the week's gone on, that Jeffrey Imba very well may be re-entering the portal. But I am a little bit surprised after this new staff, Hugh Freeze and company, Ron Roberts, as I mentioned, went out and really recruited him to come back after he was originally in the portal. I was a little shocked there. And also, I don't think there was a lack of snaps for him in 2023. Matter of fact, I would imagine that if you would have averaged out all those guys that are in that first team with Jeffrey Imba, I think the snaps would have been similar. And I'm curious to see, and I'm sure we'll find out coming down the road, really what the story is there. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody specifically. I'm a huge proponent of, if it's best for your career, by all means, go do it. I'm not going to sit here and tell a college kid that his decision to not play at Auburn is going to be career detrimental. For a guy like him, I don't think that's true. But it's certainly a piece that makes this portal period a whole lot weirder for Auburn and company.
Yeah, it really does. And to kind of sum up the story of Jeffrey Imba is number one JUCO player in the country, and he pointed this out himself earlier in the year when he contemplated entering the portal, is first year in high school, he barely played. Then he became the top 10, like the best player in the state. First year at JUCO, he hardly played. Second year, he became the number one JUCO recruit in the United States. First year at Auburn, he hardly played. And it's like, he got 82 snaps last year. And so his own pattern that he's pointed out is, hey, he would be the number one player in the country if he followed that same pattern. Tons of tools, 6'6", 305, played in 9 games, 82 snaps last year. So less than 10 snaps a game, 7 tackles, tackle for loss, sack, forced fumble. But like you said, somebody who you could very easily see taking the defensive end or defensive tackle spot on this roster, rotating in. They're going to play more guys this year. You brought in some veterans like a Messiah Neely Kite and a Justin Rogers, but Jeffrey Imba really felt like he had the size, he had the power, and it was just, he was a little raw and had to learn a little bit. And so that does kind of, to me, that kind of hurts, losing the potential there. We don't know the rest of the story of this, but that makes me wonder, now that you've lost Jeffrey Imba, how much work, we already knew going into the portal, there's a couple positions that you probably were going to go after. Do you think that you now look to add a piece with multiple years of eligibility on the defensive line to replace Jeffrey Imba, or do you have bigger things to worry about in the portal right now?
Oh, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you need to go get more defensive line depth. And that was probably already the case, to be honest with you. I think before you needed one, I think now you need 2. And that's one of those things that you don't want to go get a warm body, but you might need a warm body, because we saw what the second half of those 2s as you progress down that depth chart, and those 3s would look like in the spring game and throughout spring practice. And this group just needs some help. And we've talked about it time and time again. Hugh Freeze really doesn't have an SEC roster right now, guys. I'm sorry to damper anybody's mood or sound like I'm a Debbie Downer, but this is certainly a point of emphasis. I don't think it's target A, but it's certainly on that radar now. And I think that Ron Roberts' comment after A-Day about wanting to add to the back end of that secondary, first off, was wild. But I think that maybe he has a shift in priorities. I think that front 7 should be probably where your priorities lie.
Yeah, and to keep it with the defense for a minute, because we know that like quarterback is going to be a position you look to get at least a guy, if not multiple. We know that wide receivers, probably you're looking for a starting caliber guy, but on the defense, it feels like Jack linebacker was probably your biggest need, but do you think that there's some people, and I think I was in this group up until just recently, that we're forgetting about how many freshmen defensive backs are going to come on campus this summer? And so if you have an older player who was with the twos or threes now, like he's probably going to leave knowing that you're adding more competition in the summer and guys that were recruited by this new staff where you are a holdover. So is that one of the reasons you're looking at defensive back, is more so depth and a guy who can step up if you have an injury so you're not relying on a freshman? Or is it legitimately you need more talent in that room?
I personally, Lindsay, and I don't mean to kind of bash and bounce back your question here, man,
Right.
but I'm in love with this defensive back room. I
Yeah.
really am. I think that there's pieces everywhere. Sure, you're young, but I mean, if you just look at your starters, Nehemiah Pritchett, I think is going to have a kind of year that could get him looked at for the first round of the NFL draft. And,
Yeah.
and get ready for your clickbait, Lindsay, because it's going to get better. DJ James, I think, could be an All-American. I really do. And you're looking down that back end. Donovan Kaufman, Keontae Scott, Jalen Simpson. I mean, Caden Bridges has been good. Caleb Wooden has been good, man. We know what Kane Lee can do. I don't know what the conversation really is about adding more DBs. I think if anything, you're in danger of losing JD Rem. I think that's where you could see guys leave. But even then, I don't know that you need more bodies, because God knows this team's got enough corners. And I think that the secondary wise, that should be on the back burner, man. Linebacker should be like Ron Roberts' biggest migraine right now, because God knows it's ours.
Yeah. And to me, it feels like Jack linebacker is kind of the bigger concern over inside linebacker. And it's the comparison that I made on Locked on Auburn the other day was, look at what you did last year where you bring in a guy like a Marcus Bragg, and the intention is for him to be the third guy in the room behind a Derek Hall and an Eku Leota. Whereas this year you brought in Elijah McAllister and he is your number one. And behind him, you have a true freshman in Keldrick Falk. Behind him, Keldrick Falk, and then also have Dylan Brooks, who has had potential but hasn't really shown it. And so, I mean, I honestly would be comfortable if you went out and got two Jack linebackers, guys who you trust to rush the passer. The question is, are you going to find an impact guy after spring who can be that 1A at Jack linebacker? I don't know if you can, but at the same time, do you necessarily need a guy of that caliber in this Ron Roberts defense, or can he make it work other ways?
No, you do. I think you do in any SEC defense. I wouldn't be mad if Auburn went out and got 7 linebackers at this point. I'm being facetious, of course.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of faith in Elijah McAllister, more than a lot of people, and I catch a lot of flack for it. You Twitter people, or y'all are on my case, and if Elijah McAllister's not good, then I'm going to eat my words. But Keldrick Falk's not there yet. I don't think from all perspectives. I do think he'll be competing come October, November, but I don't know that he'll be ready in September. I do think that this is a point of emphasis. You need to go get at least one Jack, and I would venture to say 2 would probably make a lot of people feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, it's something where, look at last year. You have Marcus Bragg as your 3. Eku Leota goes down rather early, and Bragg is able to step up and take number 2 snaps. And it feels like that's the situation. If you lose one guy, especially if you lose the veteran in McAllister, you have a true freshman and you have Dylan Brooks, and you have that, and you have guys playing on a position. So it feels like, 2 is probably needed there. You look at the inside linebackers, there is a ton of upperclassmen in this room, a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors. I think Robert Woodyard could be a breakout guy this year, because it's that whole second season of college ball thing, but then also he's fully recovered from his injury and he's had a full year of spring practice now. Am I way off base in saying that the issue so much isn't numbers, you just don't quite have the proven production at inside linebacker? Do you need to go out and get a guy still, or is it you can, do you have to go out and get a guy, or is it you can get a guy if you know he can plug and play as a starter?
So there's certainly that school of thought, Lindsay, and that there is potentially some unproven talent. And I think you absolutely have to go get a guy. And even if he's not a superstar, some guy that can give you good snaps and veteran leadership. I think that's probably priority 1A. I don't feel good about this linebacker room, period. You can talk from the Jack position. You can talk about middle linebacker, outside linebacker. It does not matter. And I'm not sold on it. I don't think Austin Keys and Wesley Steiner and Demario Tolan holding down the middle. I don't like that group. I don't. And it's nothing personal against those guys. I just don't think that they bring the right diverse group of skills. And I think that you're right. Robert Woodyard definitely could be a guy that could break out this year. Don't feel great about Cam Riley. Jake Levant. No, don't feel great about Jake Levant. And to be quite honest with you, I think you need at least one guy. You probably need two, maybe three, if you can hit a home run. But this is a tougher portal period. So to answer your question, I do think it's a plug and play kind of guy, and maybe it's not a starter that'll get incredible reps and it'll be a starter by name, but you've got to find something that works there.
Yeah, it's feels like if you're ranking where you need the additions on defense, it feels like it's jack linebacker, inside linebacker, defensive line, and then way after all of that, defensive back, depending on how many guys leave. If you lose guys coming into the portal period, kind of feels like that's the hierarchy, maybe. Lindsay, or is defensive line more important than inside linebacker?
I think that inside, nothing trumps linebacker. Nothing trumps inside linebacker and on defense. But
jack and inside both, and then defensive line, and then backfield. Yeah.
You take talent that'll upgrade you wherever and make you a better football team. If they're looking at DBs first, I'm sorry, guys. You have a right to be critical because I don't get it. Linebackers should be priority 1A, period, as a group. And then you need to work on getting some depth on that defensive line. If you can get someone better than the four guys I think that are going to start for Auburn in the secondary, show me, prove me wrong.
That's a pretty good point. It's a pretty good starting five right now. In just a second, I do want to talk a little bit about the offense and some of the needs in the portal there, as well as maybe some other sports. But first, this season, Auburn Daily has partnered with Prize Picks to bring fun and variety to watching sports in 2023. Prize Picks is a free app. You can choose any 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 players from any sport in your wagers. And I legitimately mean any sport. I've seen esports in there. I've seen golf. I've seen cricket. I mean, it's literally any sport. Yeah. Predict the over-under for their next game. So you evaluate the player predictions or the projections that Prize Picks has, and you can win big prizes if they do well. They have flex options, so you can win like 3 of 5 or 2 of 3 and still win your bet. And you can have multiple sports in the same parlay. So use promo code Auburn to receive double your first deposit up to $100. It's promo code Auburn for double your first deposit. Right now, the big thing, MLB, obviously. This baseball season, win some money with Prize Picks and Auburn Daily. Use promo code Auburn.
I'm betting the Hawks, Lindsay. It's still basketball season. I'm betting the Hawks all the way through the playoffs until they break my heart.
See, there you go. See, your NBA playoffs, same thing. Go Prize Picks. I'm just a big baseball guy, and this is our time of year. We're about to be the only game in town in about a month or two once basketball's over. So very excited about that. I do want to ask about the offense. And we know it is not a secret that Hugh Freeze is open to getting a quarterback in the portal, if not more than one. We've written about that a ton at auburndaily.com. We've got tons of stories about different possible options. Outside of quarterback, because I don't really know who's in the portal, because it doesn't technically open yet, where else do you see Auburn going out and trying to find depth or find somebody on portal day?
Well, it's got to be the wide receiver room. I mean, it's. I feel like that's pretty black and white. I got a lot of stock in Kevin Brown, Coy Moore. I like what Coy Moore brings to the table a lot. Nick Marner brings some. We've heard good things and bad things about Nick Marner, but after that, it's kind of like that metaphorical, like steep drop off, because I think that there's pieces there. I mean, we've heard about Tavares Dawson. We've heard different names thrown around, and I'm just not entirely sure that this group is bringing to the table what Philip Montgomery and Hugh Freeze want them to bring to the table. And to be quite honest with you, throughout the spring, we've not heard a ton of amazing things about people not named Cam Brown.
Right.
So I think that you start with wide receiver, Lindsay.
Yeah, and it's something where I've noticed that you've got a couple guys that Auburn's tried to find ways, like deliberately tried to find ways to get him involved, even in a spring game where you threw the ball very little because the weather was awful. But you kind of forced the ball to Nick Marner and Landon King in the spring game. You had a nice play to Tavares Dawson down the field. He feels like a guy who we've been talking about now could be a breakout for years. So it feels like that there's options here, but everybody has some sort of knock against them. Cam Brown was nicked up in spring, and so didn't do as much as we would have wanted in the A-Day game and things like that. You had King and Mardner, who at times didn't necessarily look great on the field. And again, conditions were bad and all of that.
Sure.
If you're going for a wide receiver, is it going to be like an outside guy who can be a starter alongside of a Cam Brown? Or do you think that smaller slot receiver, you have so many options of guys who could fill that role? Do you think they're going to go find an experienced guy versus trying to figure out which of these guys on the roster can do it?
Got to be the outside guy, reception first.
Yeah.
And not speed as much as you're looking at reception. You've got Nick Mardner to get around people. But you got to keep in mind, Lindsay, Auburn may lose some of these guys. And I think that it's going to be a reasonably large exile. The floodgates very well may open, and they may be missing some height and some frame. Namely, we talked before on the show. I don't think people are talking enough about the fact that I don't know that Landon King's going to be with this program in 2023. And there's your clickbait. I've been waiting for you to put the ball on the tee, and you did it. I don't know for a fact that this group is what it's going to look like. Right now, I think you got to go get a possession first, big body, big frame guy that has a decent speed on him to create some separation, but a guy that can go up and get it and high point the ball, because this quarterback room that you're working with right now is going to need that kind of help.
Yeah, and it's something where even in a lot of the rotations in spring, you saw Landon King not with the first team. And he is a guy who entered the portal last year. I wrote this whole story about like he didn't necessarily want to go, but Harsin was pushing him to either transfer or play, and he wanted to preserve the red shirt. But it's not something we really had talked about as Landon King potentially leaving. But if he's not a starter at the end of spring, and I think it's a very real possibility, and that's a very good point.
Why would you say? I mean, his credit, why?
It looks like an offense that's going to run the ball a lot. And so if you're not one of the top two guys, it's like are you going to put up the stats that you're trying to put up if you're trying to go to the NFL, get drafted, things like that? It's a very good point. Not something I thought about. So it just kind of shows what you bring to this show, Harrison.
I do what I can, Lindsay. It's all you. I just try to fill it in here and there.
Real quick, before we get out of this, I know that there's some more stuff folks are going to look at as far as maybe offensive linemen who can be compete for a starting job at guard or be a backup tackle, things like that. But we mentioned basketball with the Prize Picks, Reed. I want to ask you, you are a certified basketball knower. I am not. Auburn's gotten somebody out of the portal already for this roster. What can you tell us about what he can add to this team and what else we should be looking for in the portal for basketball?
So Auburn signed Denver Jones out of FIU. If you would have told me last year, by the way, that two of my favorite transfers that Auburn signed are from Florida International, I would have been like, yeah, okay. But here we are, football and basketball. But Denver Jones is a dog. I mean, this guy just takes care of business. 20.1 points a game, 3.8 rebounds, 2.0 assists, 47.8 from the field just a year ago in a freshman campaign, a sophomore campaign. Shooting 37-1 from three. I mean, this is what you need. Not to mention, Lindsay, he's 6'4", 195, tall guard, as Dylan Lark always says. This is why Wendell Green Jr. left, folks. And,
right.
and we'd heard these rumors circling. I mean, this guy has an instant impact in a three-level scoring threat, and someone that you really, to be quite frank with you, needed on this team. Now your backcourt's going to be taken care of by Trey Donaldson and Denver Jones presumptively. Things could change. I don't think Katie Johnson's going to beat out Trey Donaldson for a starting role. I'd be shocked. But that all that to say, you bring in Aiden Holloway, and then you bring in you retain your bigs, and you've got Jalen Williams coming back and Janai Broom coming back. This lineup's starting to come together to a point where I can gaslight myself into thinking they're going to win a lot of games.
And the SEC is obviously tough, so it's kind of hard to know how good they're going to be next year. But if I'm trying to figure out this new addition to the roster, stylistically, who does he remind me of from other Bruce Pearl teams? The bigger guard who can shoot well from all three levels as a scoring threat. Who should I be thinking about as a good comparison here?
I'm not laughing at you, Lindsay. It's just funny you talking about a tall guard on a Bruce Pearl team. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around. Stylistically, I'll be honest with you. This is you caught me with the question I've really not drawn comparisons to because we've not seen Bruce do this at Auburn. in large, I mean, we've seen some efforts and consolidated efforts. I mean, I guess the closest kind of frame wise is probably Alan Flanagan, but skill set wise, nowhere near, nowhere like Alan Flanagan. They bring something very different to the table. I don't want to trash Alan because I think he may be back, but which mind blowing, by the way.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm sorry if this is a bad answer, Lindsay. This is unique to a Bruce Pearl scheme. And
that is what we were looking for here. Yeah. This is something brand new. This is Bruce going out on a limb and evolving as a coach and saying, this is a different aspect of our team we have not had that we need to have. And that's kind of where I was thinking this was going to go, and kind of, and I'm glad you had that same realization that I kind of had as an outsider. That was the thought process to me, is we haven't really done this before. And I'm curious how it'll work. And I'm curious to see what Bruce Pearl is able to do with it.
Well, Lindsay, college hoops are evolving toward that. You've got to have the tall backcourt now, and it's a tall, athletic backcourt. No shade toward Wendell Green Jr., but you got to be able to shoot over guys, and you've got to have a true 3-point threat in that backcourt to compete, especially in the SEC. I think Denver Jones brings that to the table, and if you get the right pieces in this portal to kind of complement with what you've got coming back, man, Lindsay, I'm unnecessarily high on this team going into 23.
Always great stuff. Just know that we can rely on you for the deep dives and the great insights. If folks want more of Harrison Tarr and his content, how can they go about doing that?
Man, they're crazy if they do. But if they wanted to come check it out, I'm over on Twitter at @ByHarrisonTarr. I'd like to read my byline. If you want to check out my written work over at the Auburn Daily, theauburndaily.com. If you found the show, I'm assuming you know where the website is. If not, theauburndaily.com. We'd love to have you come check us out and read all of our content. Lindsay's a far better writer than I am, so make sure to check out his work. If you want to listen to more of my podcasting work, I'm on the Auburn Daily Show on Wednesdays. Hello, we're here. I was doing this like a College Loop outro. I'm on the College Loop every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday with Dylan Lark, who I share the Wednesday responsibilities of this show with. So we have a lot of fun stuff coming up over there. We're growing at a rapid rate, and we appreciate all you guys. Make sure if you're watching the Auburn Daily Show, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you can keep up with our content. Lindsay, I'll hand it over to you.
Yep. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. That's the hub for all of the stuff, the Auburn baseball writing, auburndaily.com. Also editor-in-chief of bravestoday.com if you want your Atlanta Braves news. A lot of overlap in those things. And then my podcast, Locked In MLB Prospects, #1 daily minor league baseball podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Folks, that'll be it for this weekend. Enjoy the games. Auburn versus Alabama in the Iron Bowl of baseball. And we will see you on Monday right here on the Auburn Daily Show.